Alrighty, hello YouTube. I'm making these videos because I'm studying law and it's quite a chunky monkey subject. So to help me understand hopefully what I'm studying, hopefully if you're studying law then you can understand these things as well, I'm going to make one video a week about the subjects that I'm studying. At the minute I'm studying contracts, criminal, public international law, and I'm studying, I do a double degree, so I do media as well, so I'm studying that. I don't know if I'll make videos on that, but we'll have to see. So we're currently in week one. The first subject that I've done is contracts, so I'm just going to talk you all through it. So basically a contract is an agreement between two people which is legally enforceable. It's legally enforceable if a court thinks that a reasonable person would think so. So if I call my mate Jimbo, say, hey Jimbo, let's go out for lunch tomorrow, and Jimbo says, okay, and then tomorrow comes around, and then in the morning Jimbo calls up and says, hey man, I have to cancel, then that's, a reasonable person will probably not think that that's legally enforceable, so therefore it's not really a contract. So contracts can be made to any number of people, one, a group, or the world. So I can go up to Tom and say, Tom, I'm going to sell you this incredible notepad for $10, right? So now the offer is available to Tom only, right? If Jim says, hey, can I buy it for $10? Well, sorry buddy, the offer was not made to you. If it was made to a group of people, if I went to a classroom and said, okay guys, this is for sale, $10, take it or leave it, then anyone in the classroom can come up to me and say, okay, I want to buy it. If I list it to the world, say on eBay or Facebook Marketplace, then it's an offer to the world and anyone can take it. So that's what we got. Sources of common law. So the three main sources of law are common law, which is judge-made law. So if a judge makes a decision on a case, then that becomes law. Equity law is basically law in fairness. We'll see what that means a bit later on when we look at punishments. And we've got statute law. So statute law is anything that's written down. So the most common part of contracts, the most common type of law in contracts is common law. The secondary, I guess, is equity law. And the reason why statutes are kind of lower down is because the statute for contracts is in the contract itself, right? So if I've written down certain terms, then you are legally bound to what I've written, not what the law says, if that makes sense. Statutes are important. They're more important in international cases than in domestic cases. So in contracts, we've got domestic and international, and we study both at the same time, but they are separate. So in domestic law, we've got classifications, bilateral and unilateral. So bilateral is promises swapped between two parties. So for example, most sales, I give you a product, you give me money. If you get a JOB offering, that's where you say, I'm going to be at your company at 9 o'clock and I'm going to do some work. And you say, all right, well, if you do that, then I'll give you money. And that's, it's bilateral because it's both promises and they haven't been fulfilled. But it's legally binding. So unilateral is where one party promises and the other acts. So for example, I've lost my incredible pen. This is actually not my incredible pen. I've got one downstairs. I've lost my incredible pen. I've got I really want to find it, so I'm willing to pay $1,000 to the person who finds my pen. So I go to my local telephone pole and I get a sign and I go, $1,000 reward find pen. Right. Now, nobody is bound to do it, nobody has to do it, but as soon as somebody does find it and bring it to me, then I have to pay them the money. So this is where I promise, and the contract doesn't begin until the other person starts to act for me. So, when they come to bring me the pen, then the contract has begun. It's not, like them saying I will do it is not, as soon as they do that, it stops being a unilateral and starts being a bilateral. Bounty hunting is another example from back in the day. We don't really do it so much, unfortunately. But yes, that's the difference between bilateral and unilateral. Bilateral is two promises, unilateral is one promise if another person acts. I've got simple and formal contracts. A simple is any written or oral contract. Most of these are simple. Formal, it's easy to see in contrast to each other. Formal is any contract that meets specific legal requirements. So for example, a deed of land that requires a certain amount of legalities behind it. If you get married as well, that's the same thing where there's a certain amount of legal terms. One of the key differences between both, so consideration is an important part of contracts, as we'll see down here. Bang, right there. But consideration is not needed in formal contracts. All you need is proof that it was signed. Contracts can also be classed by enforceability. So a valid contract is one where all the terms are fine, they're okay, both parties have signed, and as long as we keep going, everything will be fine. A void contract is where the contract never existed at all. So, for example, if the terms are just really ambiguous, right? If I say I will sell my notepad at Times Square, right? Well, I haven't listed a price. I haven't listed what time I'm going to be there. I haven't listed who the offer's open to, or I don't really have to list that. But yeah, since I haven't listed a price or a time, the terms are ambiguous, so it's void. The contract never existed. An illegal contract is one where the terms of the contract are illegal. So for example, I will pay you 30 kilos of crystal meth if you kill my grandmother, right? Now, trafficking drugs is illegal, killing grandmothers is also illegal, so therefore the contract is illegal, and usually if it's illegal, it's also void, because the terms are, it's pretty self-explanatory. So yeah, void and illegal go hand in hand, more or less. An unenforceable contract is one that is valid, but that's not enforceable. So for example, if I just do a handshake agreement, that can be considered one where, you know, there's no evidence for it, but it's still valid. It's just hard to enforce. It's pretty self-explanatory. Usually it's when it's not formatted properly, that's when that happens. Voidable contracts are ones that have vitillating factors. So for example, if I put a gun to your head and say, okay buddy, here's the deal, I'm going to take your shoes and I'm going to give you $20, and you say, damn it, don't shoot me, take it, right? In that instance, you are under duress, so you made the contract, and you can, the contract is valid, but seeing as though you are under duress, you can back out of it. If you are unduly influenced, so for example, if there's an earthquake, you're in a panic, and then you make a rush signature on a contract, that can be a vitiating factor. Sorry, it's vitiating, not vitilating, that's important to know. Unconscionability, so if you're not conscious when you sign the contract, then you can back out of it. Or by mistake. Officer, I slipped, fell, and accidentally signed the contract. I want to back out. Great, you can back out. The last category is by performance. It's either been executed or it's executory, which means that it's unfinished. So for example, you know what, I don't think I need to explain this. I think it's pretty easy to tell. So the elements of a contract are agreements, consideration, and intention. So an agreement is offer and acceptance. This is where it kind of gets really technical. So an offer is a statement where the maker of the statement intends to be bound and contains promissory intent. So for example, I want to sell this amazing pair of scissors, right? So the other thing it must have is essential terms and not be ambiguous, according to this case right here. So I'm going to sell my scissors. That's not an offer right there. That's just a statement. I'm going to sell my scissors for $10. Right, there we go, there's something that's a bit more concrete. I'm going to sell my scissors for $10 and it will be on offer at my local marketplace this afternoon. There we go. So now we've got something where the terms are clear, and I'm showing promissory intent. So I'm showing that I do mean to do this. At the moment, since I'm explaining it, I'm not showing promissory intent, but I hope you get the idea. Essential terms are not be ambiguous, yep. Yeah, and I intend to be bound, so I intend to be bound by what I say, although I don't, because I'm just doing it for the video. What is not an offer is an invitation to treat. So according to the Pharmaceutical Society of Great Britain versus Boots Cash Chemists, we just call it the Boots case. I just call it the Boots case. It's basically, if I've got a pair of scissors, actually I'll explain it in the context of the case. So what happened here is, Boots, which is the company, they used to have their drugs behind the till. So you'd come up to me and you say, hey Elijah, I need some cough drops. And I said, okay, and then I'd get the cough drops, give it to you, and then you'd buy them. In that instance, the offer is, I'm sort of making the offer at the till. It's me making the offer and you accepting the offer. What an invitation to treat does is it flips it on its head. So what happened with this company is, instead of storing them at the back, they stored them at the front and they put the till at the back. Kind of like what we see these days. So a customer's allowed to pick it up, examine it, and decide, do I want it, do I not, and put it back. In this case, a customer picked something up, decided he didn't want it, put it back, and the company, Boots, were like, hey buddy, you picked it up, you accepted our offer. And the courts were like, no, that's not true. What you've done is an invitation to treat. So the invitation to treat basically means that instead of the seller making the offer to the customer actually makes the offer to the seller. So this means that the customer looks at the product decides they want it, and then walks up to the seller and says, hey, I would like to buy this, right? So now it's the customer saying, I'm willing to give my money in exchange for your product, instead of the seller saying, I would give my product in exchange for your money. So that's what an invitation to treat is. Promissory intent can turn an invitation to treat into an offer, especially if the terms are clear, definitive, explicit, and cannot be negotiated. So coming from 9 to 11 for 50% of all products, that's something that I listed. So that means that if you walk into my store, which sells incredible rolls of sticky tape, and you come from 9 to 11 in the morning, then when you walk in, I am legally obligated to sell you anything for 50% off if you choose to buy something. So you walking in doesn't mean that you're going to buy a product, it just means that you are entitled to 50% off all products during that time. And that's the offer that you accept when you walk in the store. What are we looking at here? That's right, so this is another interesting case, Khalil versus the Carbolic Smoke Ball Company. So basically this smoke ball company, they're like, hey guys, check this out. We've got some pretty awesome smoke balls that can cure all illnesses. It's pretty cool. Now, if you take it, I forget what the exact terms are, something like 3 times a day for 2 weeks. While you have a sickness, then the sickness will go away. If it doesn't, then we promise that we'll pay you, I think it was £100 or something like that. And so one lady, she bought the smoke ball, tried to do it, it didn't work, and so she was like, I want more money. And then the company was like, oh, no, we were just fluffing, we were just advertising. But it turns out that since the conditions were so specific, and since they didn't really have the backout clause, the company had to pay the money because they said so in their advertisement. So this is a unilateral contract where they say, where it's open to everyone, if you meet these certain conditions, if you act, then we will pay. So yeah, that's a pretty cool case. Tenders. So what a tender is it's a piece of chicken that you put in your air fryer. No, I'm joking, it's not that. A call for a tender is basically an invitation to treat. So for example, I go to the marketplace and I say, hey guys, I need a tiler to tile my house, right? So now all the tilers can come and send in their applications, and I'm not obliged to choose any of them, right? So I'm asking them to make an offer for me. So that's why it's an invitation to treat. A submitted tender is an offer, so it's where I say, okay, I can see all of you guys, I submit my tender to Johnny, right? So Johnny, you tile my house. Now, a process contract is a call for tender with a certain clause, e.g. lowest offer accepted, you can kind of see that there. Blackpool and Field Aero Club versus Blackpool Borough Council is basically a place where a case in which one company wanted people to, I think it was renovate their, I can't remember, the Aero Club, it would have been the Aero Club. They wanted their club to be renovated. So they put out their call and said, all right guys, submit your submissions by a certain date, let's say 10th of August, and then you'll be considered. So one group submitted it on time, but mistakenly it was deemed to be too late. So this company took the Aero Club to court, and it was found that the submission should have been marked as on time. And a breach of this could result in damages. We'll look at damages in a second. We'll actually look at damages right now. Yeah, so that's what a process contract is. It's where if I make a term, if I make a call for a tender with a clause, then that's a process contract. Where if you meet the clause, then I have to take you on. So punishment. Now, I remember, if you remember properly, we were talking about, how long has this been going for? 13 minutes. We've been talking about common law and equity law, and this is where it becomes relevant. So, a punishment could include damages. So, for example, the contract says you owe me $10,000, you only paid me $5,000. So, a damage is where you just pay the $5,000, it becomes fair. Others under equity law include specific performance, which is a positive duty to act. So say that I asked you to, pull out my weeds, cut my grass, and I don't know, gurney my tiles, right? If you didn't gurney my tiles, then the court can make you gurney the tiles. An injunction is a negative duty to act. So, for example, like a restraining order. A rescission is where you cancel the contract, and a rectification is where you rewrite the contract retroactively. Say if the contract demanded too much, then the contract can be rewritten. Alright, so that's all domestic stuff. This is a chunky ass subject. We've got international law, so it's got its own history, its own cases, and must be treated separately. And the key piece of law that we're looking at is the 1980 UN Convention on Contracts for the International Sale of Goods. And it must be, in Australia we have ratified it, which means that basically we've seen this international law and we've said we're going to apply this to all of our states and territories. So this means that if you follow international trade rules in New South Wales, you follow the CSG. This will come in handy later. So the treaty applies if you're selling goods, so not services. So I can't, if an American wants to hire me to, I don't know, do whatever, install solar panels, then this wouldn't apply because that's not a sale of goods. Between two businesses, can't be for personal use. Across countries, so me selling goods to someone in Queensland, that wouldn't work. Where both parties are CISG, I got that wrong, CISG signees. So for example, some notable exceptions: England is not a signee, actually the whole UK, so Scotland, Ireland as well, Wales, they're not signees. India is not a signee either. So whenever we're doing a trade to those places, if something goes wrong, the court will decide which law applies. The international court will decide which law applies. And if one party hasn't signed, it will normally be the other party that signed the CSG. So for example, if we sell some products to India, and it gets taken to court, something goes wrong, then the courts will decide that Australian domestic law applies, and since Australian domestic law is the CISG, since it's been ratified, then the CISG applies. And it applies unless explicitly said otherwise. So Australian domestic law applies excluding the CISG. That means that it won't apply. If there are any gaps, then domestic law will take the place, e.g. vitiating factors, gotta stop getting that wrong. Vitiating factors, they're not covered in international law, and so Australian law, for example, would apply. That's pretty much it. Thank you for watching my video. Let me know if I missed anything. If you're a law student, if you're not a law student and you found this interesting, oh man, I envy you. Yeah, cheers.